Ready?
Yes, sir.
Call this meeting to order, September 3rd, City Council meeting. If you would stand with me for the invocation and prayer.
Please bow with me. Lord, we witnessed a wonderful event this Sunday night that just shows you how lucky we are to live in Highlands County in the city of Sebring. We had people from all colors and creeds come together and pray and raise up the unity that we have shown in our community and the safety that we have, and we look to you to help us to continue on that path towards our spiritual freedom, our freedom to speak, our freedom to live, our freedom to be free. We ask that you watch over all of those tonight that are suffering, and lay your hand on them for healing guidance. We also ask that you watch over our city council and guide them to make fair and kind decisions. We do all we do in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kathy, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Shoup.
Here.
Detman.
Here.
Ivy.
Here.
Lawrence.
Here.
Stewart.
Here.
Carlisle.
Yes. Okay, if there's anyone in the audience that's not on the agenda, if you would like to be, you see Clerk Haley, she will set you up and you can come before us. Mayor's report.
Just to report on Sunday night, there's a few hundred people on the circle. It was pretty cool to see all that and how we all work together, and it's really neat, like I said, to be in this community. We're very fortunate where we're at and how we act with each other, and but it was a great event. So, but all of those that you participated, it was wonderful, and if they do it again, everybody needs to participate. So.
Yeah.
That's all I had.
Thank you. Councilman's concerns, comments, or liaison reports? None?
No, sir.
Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Ivy?
I have, it's been brought to my attention that we have a business that's creating some difficulty in their community and their surrounding community, and I'd ask Chief Hoagland to come up and give us a rundown about what's going on there.
Mayor, council, and staff, good evening. Chief Hoagland for the record. Sent some correspondence out to each of you late this morning regarding the All-American Bar and Grill, or the All-American Grill located at 3400 Sebring Parkway. It's a business. The building is owned by Ms. Ayla Akla. She approached council several years ago about having a zoning change done and ran a restaurant out of the facility. The facility has recently changed not ownership but management. It's being run now by another manager and family, a gentleman by the name of Mr. David Trent, and their opening weekend was August 15th. And the first event that was at the property was a birthday party that was supposed to be held over in Polk County. I believe it was in Fort Meade. That venue got canceled. The event came here. In response to that event being held here, we received a Crime Stoppers tip that there may be a homicide at the event related to a shooting. The event owner or the event manager decided to continue with the event. We supplemented staff. Fortunately, we had no issues relating to the Crime Stoppers tip or to any crimes in regard to what the threat was. What we did have, however, was approximately 400 people show up for a birthday party. Certainly the venue is not large enough to support that type of a crowd. The occupancy under normal business conditions is about 207, I believe. Under the executive order with COVID, that's reduced to 104. People parked in the parking lot of the business, they parked in the parking lot behind the business, and when those areas were filled, they began parking in the streets adjacent to the business. So both residential areas to the east and west of the property were filled. Those parking endeavors taken by vehicle owners and occupants led to some conflict with homeowners and property owners, as you might imagine. Cars parked on rights of way, cars parked in driveways, cars parked in lawns. And with those cars came complaints from residents that they left trash, that there was loud music, and that there were confrontations about people even urinating on the property when they would get out of their cars and get back in their cars. 3 of those complainants showed up at the last council meeting, and I was able to make contact with them before they brought the issue to light for you in public venue, with hopes that we might be able to mitigate and come up with a plan between the property owner, Ms. Akel, the property manager, Mr. Trent, and come up with a solution that might be long-term if this business is going to stay in operation and host these types of events. Ms. Akel admittedly advised she was not aware of the event. She said she had no idea that the party was planned or that it was going to happen until after the fact. Sunday morning, I guess she was confronted by one of the area residents who basically told her she couldn't have these types of parties, couldn't have these types of events, and that was met with a certain level of resistance, obviously. The business, or the business manager now, it's Dave's All-American Grill, Mr. Trent. We have attempted to reach out to him. We've made phone calls, we've done a site visit, we've set an appointment to go meet him, and we have not had any success in contacting him. Our goal would be a collaborative effort, obviously, where we could work with him to help manage the events that might be on the property so that he is successful in his business endeavors. We've recently learned that there is a party scheduled for this coming Saturday over the Labor Day weekend. It has been promoted in similar form and fashion to the August 15th event. We have no idea what crowd expectations are going to be, but it is a local person whose birthday it is. We anticipate there will be a large crowd. We also anticipate some of the associated problems based off the events of the 15th to carry forward for this event. And as we attempt to look at plans to mitigate that, what I'm asking in the correspondence I sent you is perhaps permission to close the adjacent roadways next to the business from the rear property line all the way to Sunset with parking restrictions so that we can offer the residents there some peace of mind that they won't have people in their front yards, they won't have trash in their front yards, and they might not have people using the restroom in their front yards. The property is set up with approximately 75 parking spaces between the front of the building and the parking that's available immediately off the back. I'm reasonably sure that if they have that many cars on site, they're going to be close to posted occupancy as we sit right now. How we handle that will obviously have to be with much discretion in light of the current circumstances and dependent upon the crowd we have so that we can handle it safely. Beyond that, we don't have any long-term solution. Hopefully the property owner and/or manager will come to the table. We can work something out that won't be a burden on us as the department or as a department, and certainly on city staff and resources. But what we're trying to do now is certainly make it through the upcoming party, assess what kind of issues we're going to have, hopefully have an ability to safely look at it in hindsight and develop some solutions that might work for all of us collectively long-term.
So what do you need us to do, Carl?
Ideally, when we have special events, we offer local road closures whereby we'll shut streets down and make traffic available for local residents coming to and from or through the event area, and then offer an opportunity for parking restrictions so that if we do have groups of people coming into the event area and parking on the right of way, the officers have an ability to tow those vehicles because the roadways are closed.
Do we need to put up no parking signs, or can we just?
We would. What I would ask is my staff to get with the CRA, obtain the parking restriction signs that we put out for every other special event approved by council or coordinated by the city. We would put those up at least 24 hours prior to the event on street signs, mailboxes, and everything else that we have available in the area. For a road closure, put barricades up on both the Sunset side and the Parkway side near the property line, and we'll have an officer posted with the signage that dictates that it's local traffic only to try and mitigate, again, just sheer mayhem with people parking everywhere.
What about the occupancy issue?
Occupancy is definitely an issue. As we sit currently, again, 104 people are allowed in the building with the executive order that's in place. The building occupancy has been set at 207. It is criminal to exceed the violation or the occupancy under the executive order. We could refer charges after the fact to the local state attorney's office to try to get Mr. Trent's attention if the occupancy is exceeded. If it exceeds the set threshold for life safety at 207, I think we would have to really consider emptying the building out and counting people back in.
Mm-hmm.
My concern if we have 400 people there is, of course, the ability to do that safely.
Yeah.
I would much rather have a chamber full of angry residents Tuesday morning or Tuesday evening than a parking lot full of a riot or anything else because we tried to take control of the business. But we'd have to do so responsibly and safely as possible.
So if there's that many people, they're outside drinking too.
That's another concern. Obviously, we don't have any type of an exemption of the ordinance for open container, and there's a likelihood that that would spill into the front parking lot and potentially into the rear parking lot for open container. A completely separate but certainly worthwhile issue of trying to manage and control.
Well, I don't see why we should put up with either one of those things.
It would come down simply to a safety issue. Again, we had on the 15th at the arrival of the birthday person, he arrived in an entourage of 35 vehicles, and there were already 400 people on scene. Attempting to control that with 10 officers is simply a challenge. But I agree, from a control perspective, it's not something we should tolerate, it's not something we should be in a position that we're forced to tolerate. But the safety and well-being of everyone involved certainly is at the forefront of our minds.
Do you have the availability of the sheriff's department to support this?
We have reached out to the sheriff's office, specifically the supervisor of their COPS ADAPT unit, in hopes that they have supplemental personnel that will be available. We've also reached out to their watch commander, who is the shift supervisor, to give them the heads up, so to speak, as far as what we're contending with.
This is not gonna end.
If they exceed the occupancy under the guidelines, though, you can shut that business down, can't you? Under the
We have the
50%
ability
rule?
to shut them down long enough to get everybody out, and they can count people back in. We don't have an effective resolution to lock them out of the business long-term, no. Once they're under threshold of occupancy, they can resume business.
Can the state do that? I've heard that they've shut down places that have exceeded that occupancy and
There-
literally shut them down.
There may be an ability to refer it back to the DABT, or Division of Alcoholic Beverages and Tobacco, or DBPR. I will say, in the licensing process for this business, we've reached out to DABT on 3 occasions and have yet received a phone call back, even though they were in town to do a site visit. My assumption, and not to be critical, is that they are simply overwhelmed trying to enforce and work through the administrative process of businesses, of occupancy, and of people remaining viable during this pandemic.
Are they serving food? Or is it
Yes.
mostly
Yes.
booze?
They serve
At least
food.
50%?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, we don't have revenue numbers to support that they're profiting 51% of their business from food sales. As best I know, they've only been in operation since the 15th. We did have reports of several patrons on the night of the 15th that people left without having received food. They had placed orders, they were waiting for the kitchen to catch up, and the kitchen was simply overwhelmed. I believe they're trying to run a legitimate business, both food and beverage. This just looks much more like a nightclub perhaps than it does a restaurant.
You're right across from the church, so.
They are across from the food bank, I would call it. Forgive me, I don't know what the name of that church is.
Well, having some experience with those kinds of situations in a past life, I agree. Safety without a large number of officers is difficulty, and it can get out of hand quickly. I suggest that we have a number of violations that we could be able to notice there, and then later come back and hit the manager or the owner with the citations or whatever, rather than confronting, unless it just really gets something that you really need to confront. It's really violent or something occurs there. But this goes to what we've been talking about, Carl, and that's some form of a nuisance ordinance or some kind of putting into place, if we need it, something that we can hang our hat on legally to take action to try to combat some of this stuff that goes on. And I think we need, this has escalated that, because I agree, if he's not coming to talk to you after you've made these attempts to contact him, he's not looking to be told anything about what he needs to do. So again, I think just record well occupancy. We already got some legal grounds there, for occupancy, that we can later come in and work against the owner. And you'll just have to play it by ear whether you want to go in and clear people out and then let the right number of people back in. But that's always turns into a melee sometimes, so.
Yeah, we certainly have some historical accountability measures we can put in place by referring charges to the state attorney's office, by attempting to hold people accountable for violations that are witnessed, recorded, things of those nature. And certainly, if we can embrace a zero tolerance mindset and set the stage, so to speak, with our expectations, we will certainly do so. But that can't come at the cost of safety, as I'm sure everybody in the room would agree with.
We need to video it.
Yeah, we have the ability, both obviously with digital video recorders, but also with cell phones. Obviously, we can get the data and the evidence necessary to support prosecution if we get to that point.
I-
be able to do anything like, have somebody stationed at the front door to count people in? That way you limit the number of folks going in, therefore you're not having to walk people back out.
Well, if you could get your footprint in there early enough, then the
They have
owner,
a front and a back entrance.
yeah.
So you'd almost have to have two people.
Historically, what we've done, and we ran into this with this bar manager at another club that was here in town called Club Sino. What we would do when we got to the business and realized they were close to occupancy, or it looked like they were gonna pack the house beyond occupancy, is we would make contact with an employee, have that employee come back with us to the front door, and we have several officers that have the ball counters. They actually click people in, and they would try to pull people out, let them know how many they had to have. That has been effective in the past, depending upon the crowd, I will say. So we would absolutely attempt to do that, attempt to make sure that we are at a threshold that's appropriate for the occupancy. And again, if they're already packed, we're estimating that officers will be on scene. We start our shift at 6 p.m. The detail officers are probably going to come out between 9 and 10, with some flexibility based upon the crowd. The crowd seems to arrive a little bit later than normal. It's a 10 to 11 o'clock crowd that pushes the 2 o'clock envelope by all accounts. So if the officers or the detail personnel get there and they're already packed, we've got to contend with that as best we can, obviously.
I think that too, that we should make sure that we well document the first incident that you've relayed to us. Witnesses, the neighbors, what happened, so we start developing information there that we can use. Don't start now, start with the first one.
Sure.
and
By
the
all
second.
accounts, the first birthday party was more of a problem for the area residents with cars on the right of way and parking than it was for the restaurant itself. Beyond occupancy, we had no issues with the restaurant. We had no fights, we had no noise complaints, we had nothing. It was the crowd that came to the party that caused the majority of our problems. And with that were the vehicle noises. You've got cars with loud stereos, things along those lines that parked on residential streets at 10, 11 o'clock at night. That was the source of our problems.
Well, and it emanated from the business and people, going to the business, patronizing the business. So I still think we should at least record that it is causing a nuisance.
Sure.
But for sure, you should block the roads off. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
No doubt. I mean, if that's what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd
that's-
make a
What I'm
motion.
requesting is
I
that
was
we
gonna say,
handle
we need
this,
a-
we handle this like a normal block party or special event with a local road closure for those two streets and then parking restrictions for those streets that gives us the ability to post it and then tow if we have a problem.
So he's gonna make a motion and
Yeah, I make a motion that we authorize the police department to close the roads, put up the signs, and give them the ability to tow if necessary.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Anyone in the audience wanna have any comments?
This manager you've dealt with before?
Yes.
So did you have similar circumstances before?
At the club that was called Club Sino at Sebring Square, yes.
Wow.
If I'm not mistaken, the last homicide that we had might have been in the parking lot of Club Casino when this guy was the manager there.
Yeah, it was actually just prior to that club rebranding. It was called Shooters of all names when someone was executed in the parking lot.
Oh my gosh.
We had actually reached out to the original owners of that, and I don't know if the gentleman that she's referring to was the manager at the time. And we had several powwows at police headquarters about the things that were happening there. And they actually had agreed to have extra duty officers working there. And then after the homicide in the parking lot, the officer said,
Yeah.
we're not gonna stick around here.
So was Isla
That lady.
conducive to help you? Sounds like it was. So she says she'd
She-
terminate the lease if she.
She is. Admittedly, she seems to have some legal concerns that she has to have a good, solid basis to withdraw that lease. And we've referred her to her attorney. Obviously, we don't have the ability to recommend that they withdraw the lease. If he's running a responsible business, we want him in business.
Right.
So I think Isla's kind of caught in the middle. She believes that Mr. Trent and his family have good intentions, and hopefully they do. Based off a month worth of history in this first event, I'm a little apprehensive.
Well, they've been in business 2 weeks. You said the 15th, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
sorry, not a month.
Yeah, you-
Started.
You need to come up to the. You need to
You
come up
just,
to
you
the
have to
mic.
come up here.
Carl, do you want to name the closures of the streets, or do you want to just leave it as deemed necessary by you and not limit it to anything? Yeah? leave it open?
Avalon and,
You mentioned Sunset earlier, but I didn't know
it would be from the Parkway down
Right.
Avalon to Sunset.
Avalon to Sunset, okay?
And then the other side, I think, is Garden View.
No,
Cleveland and Avalon.
So
in your
Parkway on
packet, yeah.
Cleveland, all
Park-
the way to the Sunset.
Parkway to Cleveland?
It's in your
Parkway to
packet.
Sunset.
Parkway to Sunset.
Oh, I'm sorry, the diagram's in the packet, I'm sorry, Carl, I didn't know that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm Barbara Espinosa, and I live close to the cafe. I just wanted to say that the owner was extremely nice. And she had a lot of activities for a lot of different groups, and I think she helped with a lot of charities. She was a very good person, and I think she should be reached. I mean, she must have a way of reaching the renter.
She
of
was
the
reached,
restaurant.
she was part of the conversation.
Right. In other words, I think she's a very nice person, and I would hope that she would help us in this problem.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very quickly for clarification, when we sat down with Ayla, she was amenable to whatever solutions we put in place.
Right.
And we asked if she would contact Mr. Trent and invite him to the table with us to sit down.
Mhm.
And again, to date, that invitation's not been responded to. When that did not work, we reached out to Mr. Trent individually, both by phone and in person by going to the restaurant. We were advised that he would be returning shortly, and he never came back. It may be coincidence, but to date, we've still not been contacted. So I'm just under the impression, due to the lack of contact, that it's not a collaborative relationship at this point, so.
Well, I think, maybe a long-term solution if because I remember she came here and this was her dream to have this, and it was gonna be a great place, and groups are gonna come in, and she was gonna serve great food, and it was kind of a happy thing, and the council made an exception at that time, but is she amenable to coming in and saying, listen, we opened up the door wide open, and maybe too wide open, to say, we wanna give you the ability to run a restaurant like you do, but to change the zoning or whatever we gotta change on it, to say excluding nightclubs, la-da-da-da-da, she will, as a long-term solution, if she's that amenable to it, not restricting what her original dream was, but somehow restricting what else can go on in that place.
Well, it's not a nightclub, not zone a nightclub now.
No, they have the
So
exact
they
same
can't do it.
licensing.
I mean, that's the problem.
Well, I don't know if there's any restrictions that we can put on her, she would put, not us put on it, but she would be amenable to, so.
Yeah, he is licensed in exactly the same manner that Ayla was licensed for restaurant, bar and grill type thing. It's the same alcohol license. It's a 4 COP for alcohol, beer, and wine. The difference is Mr. Trent is running his events till 2:00 a.m., more like a nightclub than like a traditional restaurant with music and entertainment. It's just a slightly different form of the same business, if that makes sense. The problem is this form of business is gonna come into conflict with the residential community that's immediately adjacent to it.
Well, by law, they have to serve 51% food. So, and
How do
how do we determine that? Because if they're there till 2 a.m. in the morning, they're not doing that.
His kitchen on the 15th was open until 2 a.m. That was verified, that was checked. Now, I don't know if the kitchen's open for chicken wings at 2 a.m. or if it's a full menu, but the kitchen was open.
Yeah.
Certainly a case could be made historically as to whether or not his revenue meets the 51% threshold that would tie into the alcohol license, absolutely. 2 weeks worth of data aren't gonna get us there at this point,
Right.
unfortunately.
And Mark, there are several other establishments with the exact same license, both in the city limits and adjacent to the city limits, that operate the same way. They're open till 2:00 in the morning. They have a business license to serve food, 51%. But if you go by there at 11 o'clock, midnight, 1 o'clock, parking lots are full. I doubt everybody's in there eating, but how do you regulate that?
So the 51% really means nothing, is what you're saying.
Well, I
Well, they
think
may
what
meet that
happens.
threshold
51%
for the month, or
for
they may
the
meet that.
month or 51%.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Each
you
and
get that
every
at
minute.
dinner time.
Yeah.
And the meal is $30-40. Your drinks, beer, $3 a pop. So.
You haven't been out lately, have you?
I was gonna say, you must be eating at
Yeah.
McDonald's.
This is really, really bad news.
Yeah, because when we approved that, she told us.
She said she'd be closed at 10.
Right,
Yeah.
we wouldn't have this problem.
Right.
And that's the reason we done what we done.
And with the goal of trying to offer some separation, because I know she's still the owner, I don't think the vision of this restaurant now matches her vision.
It doesn't.
I don't think
It's-
she's condoning this type of business. However,
Right.
as the business owner, she has a vested interest in obviously this succeeding to some extent. So I just want to make that separation. This is Nayla's dream. Her dream closed, unfortunately.
With the parking's just gonna be a continuous issue anyway, and that's how you solve half of it, is just start towing those cars away that park illegally, so.
The problem we're gonna have long-term unless we change something with that parking is right now there are no parking restrictions on those residential streets. People can park on the right-of-way, it's not prohibited. So the only way we would ever get to a threshold or a point where we could tow would be to post both of those streets in their entirety, no parking on right-of-way. The property owners and the residents that live there in some instances park there. We are gonna have a significant adverse effect on them if we post that. This is really a difficult situation to contend with. This is a Band-Aid for this upcoming weekend, and it's just to try and mitigate what we know, or what we think we know is coming. The long-term solution's much muddier than this.
Well, let's get through this,
That's all we
this
can do, I
weekend
guess, is
and
what you're saying.
study the situation a
Yeah.
little bit and see what we can come up with.
Yeah, we hold the board.
Detman,
Yes?
Ivy,
Yes.
Lawrence,
Yes,
Stewart,
Yes.
Carlisle.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
thank you, Chief.
Mr. Devon, you have any reports?
Actually, I do.
Good.
Um,
Okay.
As you all know, that our long-term city councilman, Bud Whitlock, has not been well over the last several years. He's really not doing well right now. And I would just ask all of you and everyone out there that knows Bud, please keep him in your prayers.
Thank you. We will do that. Okay. Moving along. Thank everybody. The consent agenda, we have a motion.
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any comments? Not. Poll the board, please.
Detman,
Yes?
Ivy,
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Carlisle.
Yes. Okay, there's no old business, so we'll move right along into new business. 10A, Marco Espinoza. Attached, please find a special event application for the Disabled American Veterans Day. Marco Espinoza will be on your agenda to discuss this event.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. At the last meeting, Mayor Shoup presented a proclamation to the disabled American veterans for September 25th, 2020. And what we'd like to do is have a small ceremony, basically dealing with a flag folding ceremony. Believe it or not, I'll probably give a speech, but that should take 15-20 minutes for those two things, and then the rest of the time is going to be live music. Okay, and that's mainly for just to give back to the community. Okay, what we'd like is the use of the circle, the stage. Well, we're going to be getting some banners, the over the street banners, and we'd like the city to put them up, and if possible, to waive all fees. I don't know.
So you're talking about from 12 to 2?
Yes,
Okay.
2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah. It'll probably be about an hour, 20 minutes for the ceremony, an hour and 40 for the music.
make a motion to approve the event as presented.
I'll second.
Okay. Any comments?
I'd just like to say thank you very much for doing this for our disabled veterans. I think it's a great thing to recognize them anytime we can.
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay. Pull the board.
Detman.
Yep.
Ivy.
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Carlisle.
Yes. Okay, 10B, it's appointment to the Community Redevelopment Agency. The terms of Megan, however you pronounce that. Giacomo. Di Giacomo. Stephen Schultz on the Community Redevelopment Board will expire September 30th, 2020. Both are seeking reappointments. The vacancies were announced at council August 4th, 2020. Meeting posted on city website. 3 additional applications were received. The applicants are as followed: Brandon Craig, Megan Di Giacomo. These people's names. Well, anyway.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Huh? Bernadette Gonzalez, Glenn Hales, and Stephen Schultz. Board members' applications and resumes are attached to each applicant. Terms of office is for 3 years. The following procedures will be used to fill out the vacancy. The council president will instruct the city clerk, which is Ms. Haley, to read the names in alphabetical order using the attached ballot sheets. Each council member will have a total of 1 vote per vacancy. As the name is presented, the council will vote yes or pass. 2 nominees, the majority votes will be appointed to the CRA board. So, Ms. Haley, you're on.
The first one is
Before we do that, is there any of those people that might like to speak on their own behalf, that possible appointees?
Come on up.
Good evening, board. My name is Bay Gonzalez. Bernabe, but so difficult. I just go with Bay.
Okay.
I'm new resident in the city. I also have my business here in the city, and the community redevelopment agency is like a place, where community comes. And to me, community is important because that's the foundation of everything we do.
Absolutely.
And that involves families. That involves all the activities and whatever. When I lived in the north side of the county before, I usually come down to the Sebring and I enjoy some of the activities that take place in the circle, and I learned that they were provided by the CRA. So that's my interest on it from experience. I used to chair boards for the community in Hardy County back in 2005, 2010, on that area for different agencies in the community, including the Ministerial Association, or the praise that we give out, similar to the Samaritan Center here, but they're different purpose of what you have here for the clinic. So I also was consulted with when this Samaritan clinic opened here, and gave ideas on what to do when they opened that project. I know it's more of the county than the city, but it gives you an idea, so I got some background in some of these processes. So I just wanted to let you see who that goes.
Thank
with
you.
that difficult name. But in honesty, it's not my fault. I would have chose something more, more hip and hop than that one, but that was hung up on that one. So anyhow,
Well,
here I'm out this service.
Well, my excuse is I graduated from Sebring High School. They didn't teach us how to read names.
We went over that.
They did when I went to Sebring High School. I was going to do it right.
They
yeah,
did when you were there. Okay. So anyway, just to meet you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dang.
Okay. Go ahead. Yep.
First name is Brandon Craig. Detman.
Yes.
Ivy.
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Carlisle.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Craig will get the first vacancy. Vacancy number 2. The first one is Megan D.
Okay.
Di Giacomo, and I knew how to say this. I knew how to say
Hang
this.
on.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Not gonna say it again. Giacomo.
Good job. People have,
Bobby Lee,
yes, sir.
and this is kind of a weird request, but I would request that you have your attorney determine
determine if anyone can be reappointed to this position. If you go back and look at the original enabling document back in 1981, it allowed for appointment only. There was no comment about reappointment. Now, it may have been something that happened since then. I haven't found it. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But it appears that only people can be appointed. They serve their 3 years. And that's it. Now, young Swain may know the answer already.
Yes, he's
Well,
looking.
I'm not familiar with anything that you would have to authorize reappointment because they are appointed. Each time they're appointed, they are appointed. We call it reappointed because they're an incumbent, if you will, asking to serve again. So each appointment is a separate appointment.
In theory. But they're asking for reappointment.
They are asking to be appointed for another term.
I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
But fair question.
So just for clarification, Bob, it's fine that we appoint him again, correct?
We certainly have done that
In the past.
Yeah.
lots of times in the past.
Okay.
Let me see if I can pull that up while I'm sitting here.
Thank you, sir.
I think you're fine to consider Megan DiGiacomo, even though she currently serves.
That's fine.
Yes, sir.
You can go,
I'm sorry,
you
sir.
can continue.
Can I call Megan's name?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. Okay, this is for Megan DiGiacomo. Okay. Detman,
Yes.
you're a D.
It's an alphabetical thing.
Yes. Ivy,
Yes.
Lawrence,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Carlisle.
Yep.
Ms. DiGiacomo gets the second vacancy.
Okay. That's that. Okay, business from the audience?
No, sir.
No business from the audience. City administrator? Nothing? I mean, city, attorney, city attorney. I can't read either.
They taught that in my class.
Did they? You must, I spent a lot of time at ag.
That served you well over the
It
course of
did.
your life.
It has made my living. Okay, the administrator.
Good evening,
Mr.
council.
Good evening.
Agenda item 13A is a proposed lease agreement between the city and the Elks Club to utilize their boat ramp. As you know, our boat ramp looks to be closed for about 4.5 weeks. And I've reached out to the Elks Club, and they are amenable to leasing their boat ramp to us at no charge. We did put 4 months on this. We don't expect to need it for 4 months, but just in case, we figured we'd err on the side of caution. This
Is
would
the
allow
same crew that did West Center doing this, is that why you put 4 months out there?
Oh.
That was harsh.
By the way, West Center is finished except for a little hole in the parking lots. And it looks good.
So this would allow the boat owners to launch and bring their boats in, especially in case we have an emergency such as a hurricane. But Elks Club has agreed to it. This is a modified one. I sent an email earlier. Our insurance pool carrier recommended some modified language, if you will, and that's in gray on your lease agreements, and city clerk has the original already executed by the Elks Club.
I just have, I guess, one question, and, I know at Veterans Beach, there was quite a few people that came in there and launched their boats on a regular basis. Does the Elks Club kinda have an idea what they're getting into here?
I did have a conversation with the Elks Club about that. They are going to have a meeting to discuss how they might handle that. When I spoke to them originally, my main concern was about the boat owners around the lake, especially from an emergency perspective and being able to get their boats out of the lake. I know that some have already inquired about putting their boats into the lake, as recently as within the past week. I do not know what their response is going to be in reference to that yet, as to folks who don't live on the lake, but folks that are patrons of our lake. if you will.
This doesn't provide for the use of the parking area other than to access the ramp.
The ramp,
So unless
okay.
unless the Elks Club chooses to open up their parking area for
For them
people
to
that may be difficult.
Park their trailers or
Yes, sir.
whatnot, so this probably isn't gonna be the, let's say, the regular 30 or 40 people we have on the weekends
Correct.
that launch their boats and go. I
Elks
know it's
could decide to
intended
make it a
more for the
fundraiser.
emergency thing,
They could
but,
charge for parking and make some money.
yeah,
So-
and I think that would be a reasonable thing.
Well, yeah.
And they may do
Yeah.
that. I mean, we
Yeah.
had that conversation.
Uh-huh.
They may charge patrons to park their boat and trailer.
Yeah. Or
But
the car
that's a
trailer.
decision for their
Yeah,
board to
okay.
make.
Okay, so ours is really just to
To
use the
utilize
boat
the
ramp.
boat ramp.
Yeah, okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
And we're gonna have, we're working with the county to get it, the sediment cleared off of it. Hopefully they'll be able to do that this week. We don't know that yet for sure, but, Ken will be meeting with a representative from the county tomorrow, to discuss that.
Good
But
job.
it's not really usable right now. It's pretty sand laden, if you will.
Well, I just want to say, thank you very much for doing that. I think it's a very foresighted thing in case we do have a storm, so that people aren't caught short. So,
Need a motion?
I would, make the motion that we approve the lease as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any audience, anyone in the audience wanna speak? Anyone else up here? All aboard.
Detman. Ivy.
Yes.
Lorenz.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Carlisle.
Yes. Last but surely not least,
Council needs to approve the paying of bills, please.
Second.
all aboard,
Detman.
please.
Ivy.
Yes.
Lorenz.
Yeah.
Stewart.
Yep.
Carlisle.
Yes.
And just one announcement, following this meeting, we will have the second and final enterprise and special revenue fund workshop.
Just one quick thing, for those of you that put in for the position of
Yeah.
CRA, thank you for your
Yes.
interest, even if you weren't chosen at the time. But we have other boards and that could use help. I'm the liaison for the Code Enforcement Board, so if anybody want to do some exciting work there, you can apply for that.
I think the historical preservation group.
Yeah,
board
historical
also needs
preservation.
help.
There's a lot of boards that